Take it any day.
Shocking. Does anybody else hear the Jeopardy thing? That goes a lot uglier than me. He looks more like Mast.
We're waiting on Sam. He's running down from the floor.
Okay, very good.
Your mic's on there, Randy.
No pressure, Mr. Chairman.
I was on the floor finishing up a couple of pieces of legislation, but where we at? And we're going to have a vote series called, so I want to make sure that our witnesses all have as much time as possible. And obviously, our panelists, you all represent a variety of interests across the energy industry, and including transportation and infrastructure sectors, obviously important to us and essential to the movement of energy across the supply chain. You know, Russia's inexcusable invasion of Ukraine has underscored the importance of American energy, both at home and obviously to our allies. Crude oil and gas prices are hovering at all-time highs, hurting American families already suffering from the effects of inflation overall. But this crisis started long before Russia invaded Ukraine, and when President Biden and Speaker Pelosi began implementing their America Last energy policies, that's when this really took off. The administration's actions they're crippling American energy, from everything from canceling the Keystone XL pipeline to halting new federal oil and gas leasing, adding red tape that is hostile to producing and moving American energy. Just among those are just a few of the things. But under Biden, energy infrastructure projects have faced ongoing permitting roadblocks through abuses of environmental laws and efforts to throw out streamlining efficiencies to satisfy the radical environmentalist movement. Several infrastructure projects, including pipelines and LNG export terminals, they've been canceled after not being able to overcome these, overly burdensome regulatory hurdles. And now that the administration is realizing the real-world impacts of these policies, we're looking to blame anyone but ourselves. The American people are struggling as a result of these policies, and they want some solutions. The fact is, the crisis shows the importance of reliable and independent energy infrastructure, including pipelines, including railroads, ports, trucking, and more. We simply need an all-of-the-above approach that gives us reliable, affordable, and environmentally friendly American energy. With that, let's see. Do we have? Do what? Okay, we'll just start. We'll go ahead and start right through it. Again, because we will have a vote before too much longer, and I want to hear, each one of you. So if you would, just introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm John Studi with the Association of Oil Pipelines. Thanks for inviting me here to share our thoughts on the current energy crisis. The Association of Oil Pipelines represents over 50 member companies operating pipelines, delivering products like crude oil, gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, liquids, natural gas liquids like propane, ethane, and carbon dioxide pipelines as well. Pipeline operators are proud of the role they play delivering energy for American families, employers, and manufacturers. Americans depend on liquids pipelines to deliver the gasoline and diesel they put in their cars and trucks every day. Commuters use pipeline-delivered fuel to get to work. Businesses use pipeline-delivered fuel to keep supply chains moving. Shoppers across America get packages delivered to their homes on trucks running on pipeline-delivered fuel. American farmers depend on propane delivered by pipeline to dry their crops and heat their barns. Families in rural America depend on propane to heat their homes. And we all travel on airplanes running on jet fuel delivered to airports by pipeline. These are examples of how energy is everywhere in our lives and why everyone now is suffering from the high energy prices. To be clear, pipeline operators are not benefiting from the current energy crisis. Pipeline delivery fees are set in advance and do not change if energy prices rise. If anything, pipeline operators may be losing money if higher prices reduce demand for shipments of energy. Thank you for this conversation today examining real, long-term solutions to the energy crisis. The American people are telling us through public sentiment polling what they want most is safe, affordable, and reliable energy. We already have the safest pipeline system in the world. Energy delivered by pipeline reaches its destination safely over 99.999% of the time. Those are U.S. government pipeline incident statistics. Increased American energy production is the best way to lower prices long-term by matching energy supplies to demand. Pipeline operators are ready and willing to deliver the additional energy America needs to lower prices. And finally, reliability for pipelines means pro-America energy policies that are stable and predictable. It's hard to ask American pipeline operators to spend billions of dollars and the years it takes to build a major new pipeline if the president will just pull the rug out from under a project by revoking a crucial permit, or do nothing to overcome the legal and regulatory roadblocks standing in the way. We need government to empower American energy infrastructure, not hold it back. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. My name is Will Jordan. I'm the Executive Vice President and General Counsel of EQT Corporation. EQT is the nation's largest producer of natural gas. We produce approximately 7% of the country's natural gas. To put that into context, a minute out of every hour is powered by EQT. We're at a pretty unprecedented time right now. We have global energy undersupply, we have extreme inflation, and we have all-time global emissions. And what I'm going to talk about today is what I think is the solution to that. And that solution is unleashing U.S. LNG. At EQT, we put out a plan about a month ago that talks about the potential for the United States to increase its LNG export by 50 BCF. That's basically adding another global LNG market to the world. Doing so would have the emissions reduction impact equivalent of Build Back Better, and it would provide energy security to the United States and to our allies. These are practical solutions. All we need, though, is infrastructure. On the development side, it takes 50 rigs to achieve this. We're running 600 rigs in the United States right now. We were running 2,000 a few years ago. We have the capability to do this, but what we need is we need the pipeline and LNG infrastructure to achieve it. If we can solve global undersupply of energy, inflation, and have the biggest impact on climate change of any project ever proposed simply by adding pipelines and LNG infrastructure, we should be doing it. Thank you.
I can just, I can talk loud. Everybody can hear me. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. And both of these folks right here, Roger Gunther is with the Port of Houston, and Randy Reese with Sabine Natchez Navigation District. Actually, Randy and I go back to elementary school, so I've known him for quite a long while. And really appreciate both these guys and what they bring to the table here, and expertise and experience in terms of transportation and infrastructure and ports and waterways. You couldn't ask for more knowledgeable people. Proud to have you all up here, and very, very privileged to be representing the both of you. And so I'm going to let this suffice as your introduction, Roger. Appreciate you. In fact, I had a little something I was going to read when I asked you a question, but I want to say thanks. Both of these guys, Randy and Roger, are titans of the energy industry in the world of water infrastructure. The Port of Houston, Sabine Natchez Waterway. And for those of you who are not familiar, the Houston Ship Channel is the busiest deep draft waterway in the nation, handles the most waterborne cargo tonnage in the nation. And just this past year, we were able to get the authorization, appropriation, and the New Start designation for Project 11, which will dredge and widen the Houston Ship Channel, making them more efficient. And so with that, I'll let you.
Well, thank you for the introduction, Congressman Babin. Appreciate what you do and for our port and our channel and our region. Again, I'm Roger Gunther. I'm Executive Director for Port Houston. We are the local sponsor, non-federal sponsor for the Houston Ship Channel. There's a reason that we were put into being over 100 years ago to make sure that Houston Ship Channel remains safe and navigable and was improved such that it can serve the industry and the more than 200 plus facilities along the Houston Ship Channel, both public and private facilities. Again, number one, busiest waterway in the nation, over 8,000 or 9,000 ocean-going vessels each and every year, and a couple 100,000 barges moving through our channel, viable to the economy of not just our region and our state, but our nation. And, you know, energy, petrochemical, largest petrochemical complex in the country, and the largest, busiest container port in the U.S. Gulf. So glad to be here, and thanks for inviting us as a port to this hearing today. Thank you very much.
Y'all can hear me? It's with the Sabine Natchez Waterway, which is the #1 port for heavy tonnage redeployment and deployment commercial strategic seaports for all bases west of the Mississippi River. He's created over 500,000 jobs across America and plays a vital role in America's LNG market. And Beaumont is the Port of Beaumont is the third busiest port in the country. Right. Randy?
Thank you. Chairman Graves, I want to thank you for this meeting today and the other members that are present. Also, I want to thank you for the 2014 appropriation that you gave us for the Ship Channel. I think it's one of the largest authorizations, not appropriation, that had ever happened. I thank you again. We also have a film here today. If we could show that.
This isn't just a waterway. This is the frontier. Home to the nation's largest exporter, sending clean and abundant natural gas to emerging markets and close allies around the world. And on this frontier, we're building more capacity to increase our reach, strengthen our geopolitical position, and change energy landscapes, while creating tens of thousands of domestic jobs along with it. This isn't just a waterway. It's the front line, where our armed forces are staged and ready to deploy military cargo to our service members around the world at a moment's notice. And where men and women work tirelessly around the clock to supply the nation with safe and sterile products to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. This isn't just a waterway. This is our future. Cleaner, more efficient, more resilient, more secure. This is our future without a trade deficit and without fear of energy strangleholds on us or our allies. This is our future with environmentally conscious operations, actively working to curb emissions, and the creation of hundreds of thousands of good-paying jobs across the nation. This isn't just a waterway. This is America's waterway.
Have the credit. All right, thank you. I'd like to give a little history of myself. I have been in the construction business for approximately 38 years. The construction business I was in. The construction business I was in is for deep draft channels and the construction of ports, terminals, different things on ports. We have worked from New Orleans all the way to Brownsville. I know pretty much every waterway on the Gulf Coast. I know this waterway in detail. The thing about this waterway is it is a national waterway. The Sabine Neches Waterway, a national waterway, 98% of the products that are created or shipped into the Sabine Neches navigation, the Sabine Neches Waterway, goes to one of two places. It either goes to out to the American public or it's exported. Take, for example, the Midwest Explorer pipeline that takes all type of energies up the Midwest to Chicago, and the Colonial pipeline that takes material east all the way to Trenton, New Jersey. These two pipelines are critical to the national security, to the nation's security. We're also the largest exporter, largest commercial exporter of military equipment. We are the largest exporter of liquefied natural gas. 53% of the liquefied natural gas for the last 6 years have come out of this waterway. We also have Golden Pass LNG that is under construction. That one terminal will add 40 million tons of cargo a year. So this waterway is, in my sight, is going to remain the largest exporter of LNG for a long time. The waterway was deepened last in 1968. It is the only waterway on the Gulf Coast that is 40 feet deep. All the other major waterways on the Gulf Coast are 45 to 55 foot deep. The impact to the cost of shipping and having two lighter ships coming in and reverse lighter them going out is costing people money at the gas pump. I appreciate the time you've had us here today. It's a great thing to talk about our current capability because we at the Navigation District have opted to do all of the engineering on this project. So we currently have given the Corps a capability of $283 million that they can put out right now. It's the prints are on the table with the contracts. That's where we stand. And we ask for your help in getting this done. Thank you. Any questions?
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Marchetto, and I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer for Trinity Industries. Thank you, Ranking Member Graves, for inviting us today and for your leadership in this matter. I'd also like to express my sincere appreciation to every member for being present today and inviting Trinity Rail to be a part of this important discussion. Many of you are aware of Trinity Industries and what we do, but for those of you that are not, let me give you a short overview. Trinity is a publicly traded company. Trinity owns market-leading businesses that provide freight rail products and services in North America under the trade name Trinity Rail. Trinity's purpose is to deliver goods for the good of all. We remain committed to rail solutions to deliver goods safely, efficiently, and sustainably for the goods of our customers, shareholders, and employees in all the communities we serve. Our goal is to optimize our customers' ownership and usage of rail cars and equipment and enhance the value proposition of the rail supply model. Trinity Rail is one of the largest manufacturers of freight rail cars in North America, and we own and manage a lease fleet of more than 135,000 rail cars. In addition, Trinity is a leading provider of freight railcar parts and railcar maintenance. In short, Trinity is a single source for all railcar needs. We are proud to be part of an industry that plays a vital role in keeping the economy moving and delivers the products we all rely on in our daily lives. As it pertains to today's discussion, freight rail transportation plays an important role in the North American energy supply chain. For context, there are over 5.5 million shipments annually of energy-related products. Of the 1.6 billion rail cars in the North American market, 300,000 of those support the energy markets. That's 3,500 miles of train length if you put it together. So we'd go from here to Juneau, Alaska, supporting the energy markets. As a company, Trinity fully endorses in all of the above energy portfolio, and we strongly support a North American energy mix that is independent and sustainable. To give you a general idea, of the 135,000 freight rail cars in our fleet, 30% are devoted to the energy sector. 45% of those are tank cars, with the balance being freight cars carrying for hoppers and gondolas. In addition, I think it's important to understand we have more than 10,000 small covered hoppers that transport sand and other materials vital to the American energy production process. I know we'll discuss this topic more, but I also want to say that Trinity is very supportive of transporting LNG in bulk by rail. The transportation of LNG by rail has been studied by PHMSA and the FRA, and the 2020 rule to transport LNG by rail needs to stand. I look forward to our discussion today and feel honored to be here with you.
me know.
Mr. Marchetto, a couple questions for you. Obviously, we appreciate what everybody here at the table does to encourage more domestic energy production. What regulations currently, are being implemented by this administration or have been implemented that you think are adversely affecting your ability to address the domestic energy situation that many of you mentioned just now?
Well, chiefly on the LNG topic, the rules are out in 2020. It's been proven that we can support LNG movements by rail safely and efficiently. Those rules were paused for further study until 2024, 2025, and we think that that is holding back some of the things that we're talking about today that can happen, that can improve the economy.
Just one follow-up question. What would you recommend we do, what would you recommend all of us on this committee direct the Department of Transportation to do to really alleviate the issue you just mentioned?
First, I would say that we have a great relationship with the FRA and PHMSA. They understand the freight rail system in America and effectively carry out the responsibilities to keep the rail system safe for all. The concern many of us have with regulations is they're becoming political and they're not based on fact. As far as specific recommendation, again, it goes back to the LNG rule to move LNG by rail. That I think that would allow, if we had allowed that, it would be very helpful for the economy.
Thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. Actually, I have a couple of questions. First one for Mr. Gunther. Roger, with everything going on, can you please elaborate on how you've navigated the supply chain crisis in regards to the movement of energy at Port of Houston?
Well, directly being engaged in the supply chain issues from a marine terminal operator standpoint, I think it's important to point out that as a container port, which the port owns and operates the terminals, a predominantly amount of containers that are exported around the world. We're the largest export and port and the largest exporting state in the nation. And a lot of the majority of those things that go for export in containers, for instance, are petrochemical related. For instance, 1 out of every 3 boxes that is exported through the Port of Houston Authority terminals has some type of plastic resin, hydrocarbon that's produced in our region. On top of that, you could say that half of our exports in containers are petrochemical related, whether it's plastics or other chemicals that are produced. And so it's very important. What's exacerbated this crisis is obviously the pent-up demand for a lot of import, retail goods that are purchased in line with the pandemic, and it's put a strain on ports around the country. We're not immune to those challenges. However, we've been able to work with our carriers, and stay ahead of the demand curve. But the importance that outlines is, not only for energy-related exports of refined goods or gas or liquids, our channels need to be supported as well with an infrastructure funding to make sure that supply chain stays very efficient for our nation.
Is the port and channel facing any challenges right now in the import and export of LNG or any other energy products?
Well, at Port Houston, Randy mentioned about the LNG. There's a lot of LNG that's exported out of the state of Texas, not at the Port of Houston. However, a lot of LPGs and other gases are exported, out of our port, and have remained pretty strong through the pandemic. But again, I think as a non-federal sponsor and a supporter of the supply chain, to make sure that these projects, these channel navigation projects, are funded and improved. You know, we can talk about the NEPA process and working with the Corps, make sure they're expedited. And the last thing, you know, our current project, we'll call it Project 11, which is 11th time the Houston Ship Channel has been improved in its 100-year history. Deepening and widening has a national economic development value of over $130 million a year. So the faster that we get that built, the more value to the country happens quicker. So we've done things like Randy mentioned as well, engineering this thing and designing this to make it faster for the Corps to build, and we're thankful for the authorization and New Start that we got so that we can keep those projects going. So, you know, getting permitted, getting funded, keeping these projects going are certainly value to the industry of our nation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Eric, I appreciate your words here today. I filed H.R. 2100, which is providing Americans with LNG Safely Act, because we know that, you know, studies are showing that it can be transported by rail very, very safely. Could you tell us a little bit about just address the safety of LNG by rail? I mean, because I think there's just a lot of misinformation on transporting this by rail.
All right, thank you. In terms of the safety of rail, I think it's important because I think there is a lot of misinformation around the transport of LNG. First, it's not a product under pressure. So effectively, it is compressed gas that's liquefied and held at very cold temperatures. And the container that transport it is effectively a thermos that's under a vacuum pack. And it is a very stable compound with a very high flash point. And so from a standpoint of versus other hydrocarbons transported by rail and other products and pipelines that we've talked about today, it would be among the most safe because of the state of the product being in liquefied form and not under pressure.
Thank you, and I believe under Leader Gray's leadership here, we can get some movement on this, but it's probably going to be once we take over here in January. But we'll keep pushing that. I understand how important this is to you and the rest of you, so we'll keep driving that message home to the American people.
Can you hear me? Yeah, there. To Mr. Studi and Mr. Jordan, I know the major pipelines at the Keystone, has been canceled. The Dakota Access Pipeline's in question. Of course, the Enbridge Line 5 in Michigan's in question. My question is, on smaller pipelines, the connecting pipelines, the pipelines from the wellheads to the gathering entities, what's the status been on getting permits for them in this last year under this administration, and all the everything going? What's going on with that?
That's a great question, and it highlights how we have a whole web of interconnected from where it's produced through the gathering to transmission. We represent the transmission lines, but on your specific question, if you're not producing, then you can't have gathering lines to bring that product to the American people. So it shows how everything has to work together with the pipeline system, gathering from the individual production sites, the interstate long-range pipes, and then distribution out to local regions, gas stations, and the like.
I understand that, but my question is, and maybe because you guys are a large producer of natural gas, getting those permits for those smaller lines, I don't know what they'd be, 8 inches or bigger. I don't know what the size of those lines are. Has it been a challenge working with the Army Corps or EPA? What's the status? Because this administration, I'm hearing, try to do everything, put roadblocks up, even though they say they're trying to do everything to develop our energy. And then the other thing that White House keeps saying is there's 2 LNG export permits, and those facilities are being built. And I think they said there's 6 more waiting to be permitted. I believe the 2 were permitted under the Trump administration, and the 6 they haven't done a damn thing. Is that correct?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. Let me answer each in part. First, I will echo what John said, which is we don't have any need for gathering pipelines if we can't have.
No, I
the big
understand
piece
that.
goes. And with respect to gas, there've been a lot of, there's been a lot of drivers on the oil side that I can't speak to for the reduction in supply or the capping of supply, but with gas, it's easy. We've canceled about 10% of the country's pipelines in the last 5-10 years, okay? Most of them, almost all of them out of Appalachia, which is it's called the equivalent of the Saudi Arabia of gas. I call it the Russia of gas. We think in the Marcellus alone, we have the same economically recoverable reserves as Russia.
You can add Utica to that too if you want.
Yeah, sorry, I said
I'm from Ohio,
in
so-
Appalachian Basin,
Yeah,
sorry.
okay.
So, we don't, and with the exception of rail, LNG, we can't truck gas anywhere. It's a gas. It has to go through pipelines.
Yeah.
So fundamentally, if we want to have more gas production, we have to have more pipelines.
Yep.
With respect to the LNG permitting, the administration announced that they were moving forward with permits that had already been put forward for two. The plan that we've put out that calls for a 50 BCF increase in LNG. I mentioned, the security impact, the environmental impact. I didn't mention the jobs impact. Let me add the one most important thing. It will not cost taxpayers a dime, okay? This is gonna be entirely funded by the industry, and it addresses all three of those issues that are pretty critical issues right now. The only thing that we need is for an administration to recognize the importance that energy plays in the global ecosystem, both energy ecosystem, financial ecosystem, and geopolitics. Also step back and realize that America, when it comes to natural gas, 4 countries have 2/3 of the world's economically recoverable reserves. The United States, Russia, Iran, Qatar. So if we want to use, natural gas to replace coal internationally, which is the largest source of emissions in the world, it's about 50% of the world's emissions is international coal. We need to focus on unleashing our gas. Otherwise, we're going to be left in the same world that we're in today, which is we're restraining ourselves from having energy dominance, we're weakening our allies, we're acceding energy dominance to countries that do not share our interests, and we're abdicating responsibility on climate change to those that don't have the capability to do it.
We're all in. I just wanted to hear you say it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ranking Member, soon to be Mr. Chairman. Randy Reese, I want to come to you. I was glad to hear that Brian say he's gone back a long ways. I remember him distinctly talking about moving cargo up and down the Sabine Nations waterway on rafts pulled by ropes and mules, but I didn't think you were that old. Mr. Reese, as you know, the Sabine Nations Navigation District is so critically involved in moving LNG and, of course, the waterway. We've had a lot of discussion. I had that discussion with President Trump. I was trying to find my picture of him sitting there saying the energy dominance starts in Southeast Texas. I'll find it. But explain to us, for the group here, I know that y'all worked for the Army Corps of Engineers, and you worked actually in a partnership that actually went above the required amounts for that part of it. Explain to how that happened and why it's so critical for Sabine Neches waterway.
It is critical. We had talked with OMB when we started trying to get our project started. And we did tell them that we would pay 40% of the project. The reason that we wanted to do that was so we could get ahead of the Corps of Engineers. Corps of Engineers is a little slower than we are about getting projects out. And they're kind of hamstrung by a lot of their regulations that we don't have. So we're putting contracts out of our office. At the same time, we're not paying any cash money to the Corps. It's all work in kind. So the work that we do satisfies the 25% that we have to pay on a 75-25 split. But to get the project started, it is so critical to get this project started because it's a national port. We opted to pay 15% more for a total of 40%. Okay? Now, when a ship comes into the Sabine Natchez, a Suezmax comes in, they'll hold 1 million barrels. He comes in with about 500,000 on the ship. Or he has to be light loaded. Another ship goes out and meets him. They take 500,000 barrels off, put it on another ship, and 2 ships come in, not one. Same thing happens when they go out. If they go out with a load of diesel, 500,000 barrels, another ship goes out and reverse lighters it at sea. If you deepen this waterway, that stops, okay? The price of transportation goes down and the price of the pump goes down, okay, at the same time. So that's what's critical.
Well, thank you for that, and it also points to the fact that when lightering is involved, of course, Port of Beaumont, as you know, Port of Port Arthur moves more military personnel and equipment out of it than any other port in the nation, or in the lesser 49 states, as I like to say. And it's critical because if you get traffic congested on that waterway, then if we had where we need to get our military out quickly, we could have an issue. That's why it's so important. And you said this earlier, and I want to reiterate it for the group here. The Sabine Natchez waterway is the only one that hasn't been deepened in how long?
Since 1968.
1968.
Right.
Well, so we're working, Mr. Chairman, and group, so that we want to make sure that we get that included when we can on the next work project. And what else is so important about it, Randy?
Okay, what else? One point that I was reminded of. The president signed the permit for Cheniere to export additional natural gas. What y'all need to do is ask him to sign the same permit that Golden Pass has in play right now. Okay, that permit needs to be signed.
We're going to have to change presidents.
Right. Well, we can ask. If both of those plants are running, the total capacity of those 2 plants matches the Nord Stream pipeline.
Wow.
Okay? It'll replace it. Now, I understand Germany has decided to build 2 receiving terminals, okay? And what we need to do, we've got the gas. We just need to get it to them.
Yeah. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, Mr. Jordan, I'm going to come to you. You said 50 BC, I think, and was it 10%? I don't have those notes from you, increase.
So what we are proposing is actually a doubling of the global LNG market entirely from the United States.
So what is, do you know the figures for the annual sales or volume or economic input for the LNG industry in this country?
So right now, we export approximately 12.5 BCF per day.
Okay.
And we are proposing increasing that by another 50 BCF per day through 2040. I'm sorry, your question on economic?
Can you put a dollar amount, what kind of economic impact that has?
We think in addition to, for instance, in addition to not costing taxpayers a dime, many of them will actually be paid, royalty owners will be paid an average of $75 billion incremental for selling their gas to Europe, to coal-consuming nations. It has the potential to increase an annually 300,000 jobs. Most of these are high-paying jobs and over $100,000. Critically, it's 2/3 of the gas underpinning our plan, of the jobs, infrastructure, money, happens to sit in Pennsylvania and Ohio. We need, in order for this to happen, we need more infrastructure on the East Coast. And it's an area that's ripe for that.
Yeah, well, I hope we continue to have discussion to make that point. Thank you, Mr. Reese, thank you, Ms. Jordan, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. And my question is for Mr. Jordan, since you're right next door. I'm an Ohio guy too, like Mr. Gibbs there. While the other side of the aisle and the administration often focus on the benefits of renewables or green energy, we can't discuss the importance of natural gas, economic and environmental benefits that you've already spoke about. Natural gas plays a key role in America's energy independence. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, natural gas reduced the CO2 emissions of Ohio's electric generation by 38% over the last 10 years. In my opinion, and I think other people have the same opinion, natural gas is a green energy. If you haven't heard, the EU just probably a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, wanted to bring natural gas, and I'll also say nuclear, into the equation of green energy, and including that. Mr. Jordan, can you discuss the environmental benefits we've seen in America because of the switch to natural gas?
Yes, and thank you for the question. One, the United States leads all countries in emissions reductions between 2005 and 2020. 61% of that is attributable to natural gas replacing coal. In addition to that, that emissions reduction is by itself the biggest emissions reduction mega project in the world, bigger than Germany's renewables projects that has costed them hundreds of billions of dollars, bigger than China's Three Gorge Dam, bigger than any other green initiative out there. It's also true that the LNG that America exports today has an emissions reduction impact that is bigger than all of those projects. It is America's biggest initiative of reducing emissions in the world. On top of that, what we are about to embark upon is a period of understanding the impacts that inflation has on our ability to have renewables penetration. It's expected that wind cost is going to go up 25%, solar is going to go up 50%, and that's because of inflation, which is underpinned by undersupply of energy. So the reality is that natural gas allows us to have more renewables. This is true in the United States, and it's true across the world. So it is critical that we no longer take the point of view of we're just going to keep our gas to ourselves. We need to leverage it. We need to expand it rapidly so that we can get all the benefits that we have.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, done.